Good afternoon. This is week 7 of the 13-week fiscal program for American Descendants of Slavery. Misspoke last week. I said it was week 5. It was actually week 6. So I wanted to make sure I acknowledged that error and corrected it. But we are currently on week 7 of the 13-week fiscal program. I am Chief Biko. Today we have Chief Alligator, Chief Quiet Water, Chief Acubalon, as well as Chief Blackcoat. Here we focus on the acronym ADOS with most emphasis on the A, which is American. First, we're going to have Chief Blackcoat read the 12 steps.
All right, 13-week practical program. Step one, learn about the estate or estates your family originated from, who established that estate, what nation and confederacy had jurisdiction over that area prior to the European. Ask all nonprofit organizations you attend what's your position on reparations. They either support it or they don't. No support, no money. However, if they support it, then immediately children and adults need weekly classes free of charge about steps 1, 2, and 3, and field trips to American Descendants of Slavery landmarks in that city, county, and state. Step 6, don't support European holidays for the remainder of the 13-week time frame. Avoid spending money with any small businesses that doesn't hire your people, gas stations, nail salons, subways, etc. All businesses need operating cash. Spend money with American Black businesses. All other groups rely on your energy and operating cash to survive. Set the trend of making other groups follow your lead and support our clubs, services, products, and entertainment. The United States government is bankrupt. The Federal Reserve prints money, i.e., quantitative easing. It also burns money in quantitative teething. The U.S. dollar hasn't been backed by gold since Richard Nixon in 1971, the Gold Standard Act. The government operates off full faith of its citizens to pay debt and taxes. American descendants of slavery no longer have faith in the United States government. This is why financial support will be altered, stopped, and redirected. Step 11. Teach your kids 1 hour a day about their history on this land. Have them learn about a black inventor. Have them know about our heroes. They should know that the European that conquered the state you live in. They should know the nation of people prior to the European invasion, military and culturally. And step 12. Practicing these steps will educate us on the land we're claiming America and attaches us to the history and laws of the government. Every estate American descendant of slavery live, every estate American descendants of slavery live in should have steps 1, 2, and 3 advertised via social media, radio, and newspaper. This one physical quarter will bring us together for our common cause.
Thank you, Chief Blackcoat. I'll go ahead and start with the inventor for this week. This week we have Dr. Mark Dean. He was born March 2nd, 1957 in Jefferson City, Tennessee. Dean received his undergraduate in electrical engineering from the University of Tennessee, his master's in electrical engineering from Florida Atlantic University, and his doctorate in electrical engineering from Stanford University. Early in his career at IBM, Dr. Dean was chief engineer working with IBM personal computers, the IBM PS/2 model 70 and 80. The color graphics adapter are among his earliest works. He holds 3 of IBM's original 9 PC patents. Dr. Dean was also chief technical officer for IBM Middle East and Africa and holds more than 40 patents in total. The 3 original patents, I have all numbers here that they mentioned for IBM. The first one was patent number 4575826, and that was a patent for refreshing generator system for a dynamic memory. I believe that's like a processing system. There's also another one here, patent number 5553276. That is for the self-time processor with dynamic clock generator having plurality of tracking elements for outputting sequencing signals to functional units. And the last one here is 5544342, and that is for the system and method for prefetching information in a processing system. And that is Dr. Mark Dean. You're still alive today. and
Cool.
also did some research on this for, I believe it was engineering. Um, I forget what it was, engineering something, but as far as the industry, we do not even have, I believe, 5% of our people within this industry. Most of it is held from white Americans, Asians, I think hold 16%, and then it's Hispanics, but white Americans is 69%.
And you
You
said
just
Good
read
info.
that?
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chief. I'll better.
And you said we don't own any we don't get a percentage of that income, even though he invented the processor for the computer.
Correct. I'm sure he still, gains his residuals or however that is as far as his patents, but as far as the industry from our people, we don't even hold like 5% of our people are within that industry, period. So not only do we not own it, we're not even really actively working within that industry.
Wow.
The next we're going to have Chief Alligator with the Dr. Woodson quote.
Okay. Am I clear? I'm
Good
clear.
to go.
Okay.
Good to go.
I'm going to do Dr. Woodson quote number 8. The 8th quote says, "In the church, where we have much freedom and independence, we must get rid of preachers who are not prepared to help the people whom they exploit. The public must refuse to support men of this type. Ministers who are the creations of the old educational system must be awakened. And if this is impossible, it must be dethroned. Those who keep the people in ignorance and play upon their emotions must be exiled. The people have never been taught what religion is. For most of the preachers find it easier to stimulate the superstition which develops in the unenlightened mind. Religion in such hands then becomes something with which you take advantage of weak people. Why try to enlighten the people in such matters when superstition serves just as well as exploitation?" And that's quote number 8 from Dr. Carter G. Woodson, Miseducation of the Negro.
Excellent quote. Excellent quote for this week. Next we'll have what is this here? Chief Quiet Water with the definitions.
All righty. All right, so here's the legal definitions. Number 1, American, a native of America. Number 2, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Number 3, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Number 4, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. Number 5, school, any institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. Number 6, education, an enlightening experience.
Thank you, Chief Quiet Water. And last but not least, Chief Acubalon with the Maroon historical points.
Give me just a second. All right, so number 1 was a person escaping slavery seeking freedom or breaking the law. Number 2, providing unity and a strong defense came first. 3, Maroon leaders were first and foremost military figures. 4, Maroons established guerrilla warfare. 5, Maroons knew their European enemies' language, defenses, and plans.
Thank you, Chief Acubalon. We'll go ahead and finish off on the Moultrie Creek Treaty before jumping into the First Seminole War. Go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can everybody see the treaty?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and start where it says additional article. Whereas Neo, Mafla, John Blunt, Tuskegee Hiho, Mulatto King, Imantlochi, and Kancha Timico, 6 of the principal chiefs of the Florida Americans and parties to the treaty to which this article has been annexed have warmly appealed to the commissioners for permission to remain in the district of country now inhabited by them. And in consideration of their friendly disposition and past services to the United States, it is therefore stipulated between the United States and the aforesaid chiefs that the following reservations shall be surveyed and marked by the commissioner or commissioners to be appointed under the 8th article of this treaty. Pretty much it's just highlighting those. I want to say these are probably like, as it says, it principal chiefs, so important chiefs of the Florida territory or area. It seems to me that they are, again, pretty much painting these chiefs as being super willing and super friendly to actually accept these conditions that pretty much we read through articles 1 through 10, and just pretty much just clearing up any type of differences or anything that might have been misconstrued there. So it seems just making the American chiefs out to be pretty friendly and having a positive disposition to pretty much their conditions that they pretty much signed here in the treaty. Any thoughts on that?
I concur with that.
Okay. For the use of Nia Mafla and his connections 2 Mile Square, embracing the Tuplufka village on the waters of Rocky Comfort Creek, Fort Blunt and Tuskegee, a reservation commencing on the Apalachicola, 1 mile below Tuskegee, improvements running up said river 4 miles thence west 2 miles thence southerly to a point 2 miles due west of the beginning, thence east to the beginning point. Looks like they are pretty much carving out their respective areas for these principal chiefs. Looks like they're just all getting their particular territories within this confined area. Before we move on, I will go ahead and show that area or just show like a picture of that area. That way our viewers have a description or visual representation of what that looks like. But it looks like they're just carving out each other's area, which we'll see will happen again once we get to the American Removal Act. I'll go ahead and continue. For Mulatto King in Imatlachi, a reservation commencing on the Apalachicola at a point to include Yellow Hair's improvements, thence up said river, 4 miles, thence west 1 mile, thence southerly to a point 1 mile west of the beginning, and thence east to the beginning point. Again, looks like they're just carving out each principal chief's area that they'll pretty much have, they'll be residing over within that area allotted to them. Go ahead and back out here because I believe this is where it ends. Yeah. Any questions on that part so far? Or any
Yeah,
ideas?
pretty straightforward.
I made one mistake last week. If you could pull that image up, or not that additional article, but prior to that last article we read last week.
You said the last article?
Yeah, the one we worked on last week. I just want to that last sentence.
Gotcha. In Article 10.
It hit me. Was it yesterday morning? Yeah, yesterday morning. This hit me, and a light came on, and I just wanted to share this.
Okay. Go ahead and pull this up real quick. Share my screen.
This is very important.
Blow this up real quick. So this was the last thing we read.
Okay.
One here in testimony.
And so, okay, that last sentence where it says done at Camp done at camp on Moultrie Creek in the territory of Florida, this 18th day of September, 1823. Here's the key. And of the independence of the United States. So the military did this independent of the United States. We got to put a pin in that.
Okay.
This is the military contracting on their own. Follow me?
What do they mean by, okay, never mind. I got it.
Well, because Congress has to declare war. Congress never declared war in the First Seminole War. So this ties into the Confederacy. So basically the military contracted outside of the United States government to get the Southeast region of North America. And then that military turned around and fought against its own government. That's key, that sentence. So we need to put a pin in that and understand this treaty is independent of the United States. So that colonel that Chief Blackcoat was talking about, who acts as the treasurer, this colonel and Duval, James Gadsden, William Duval, Bernie C. And they all did this on their own. This had nothing to do with the United States government. This is strictly military. And so this just proves with military occupation.
It's kind of like workers going on strike.
Break that down, Chief of Keep a line.
Just because if the military is the only people who did it and they did it independent of the United States, like the United States government, that's just basically like the same thing that workers do. They all come together and know that they want to basically, because this is kind of like they're overthrowing the United States government in a sense, because they're acting without the government, and to act without the government, you have to be stronger than the government. So they pretty much united and had like a common goal, like, all right, we're going to do what we want without them, without having to ask them and without like their permission, basically.
Yeah.
But we're taking what we want.
And they have that power to do that because now you have that military behind you, that confederacy that they would claim then. So you can bump heads with the United States government and how that show a force to stand on it. So it makes sense in independence.
Yeah, they had an equal force.
That too, yep.
The United States government probably just picked them up. Like, yeah, y'all beat us a couple of times, so we just going, commission y'all to help us out in international wars.
That's going to be interesting as this plays out. That dawned on me, because what we know that the world doesn't know yet is when we worked that Emancipation Proclamation, we know that Lincoln had manpower problems. That's why he had to release the people that were working the land. Right? He had to give them quasi-freedom because his military, like Chief Abklebelon just said, his military turned on him in the South.
Correct. So that's great points. And it kind of even goes back to what we were saying prior to reading the Moultrie Creek Treaty with the militiamen, like them probably being needed to even, go into battle against the American Seminoles in this particular war here too. Like, so you can see like how these different areas of these groups of power coming together and be like, you know what, we can do this ourselves. We don't really have to get that approval. So that was a great point to their Chief of Cubalon. Let me see here. Forgot where we left off here. So let's start here.
The beginning point.
Beginning point.
Pull
this up. So, all right, here we go. I think it was Imancha Timiko, a reservation commencing on the Chattahoochee, 1 mile below Ikancha Timiko's house, thence upset river for 4 miles, thence 1 mile west, then southerly to a point 1 mile west of the beginning, thence east to the beginning point. Let me see here. The United States promised to guarantee the peaceable possession of the said reservations as defined to the aforesaid chiefs and their descendants only, so long as they shall continue to occupy, improve, or cultivate the same, but in the event of the abandonment of all or either of the reservations by the chief or chiefs to whom they have been allotted, the reservation or reservations so abandoned shall revert to the United States as included in the cession made in the first article of this treaty. So here's pretty much again was pretty much showing the areas allotted to those principal chiefs, but it also has here a pretty much a clause here, how I'm reading it, that pretty much it seems to me that it's not only all chiefs, but if one chief and their pretty much descendants abandon the area, then that now becomes property of the United States. And as we'll see once we get to the Seminole War as well as the American Removal Act, that this pretty much treaty becomes null and void. But you can also see how they was trying to pretty much force them out of this area to pretty much get that land. So this is pretty much like a clause of them writing themselves in of, hey, we can still do this even if we want to. We just got to make it where they quote unquote abandon this territory. Any thoughts on that?
I'll build on that. That first clause is a catch, where it says to the aforesaid chiefs and their descendants only.
Mhm.
So they're saying you can peaceably possess this land, but only you and your family can.
Correct.
Again, you're stripping them of any warriors or any security, because if they're not related to you, the United States government, well, the military is basically saying only your immediate family can be in this reservation. Right.
Mhm.
You can't
Correct.
have anybody else. That's a bad deal.
Correct. And like we saw, not all of our chiefs and warriors signed this this particular treaty. So those who still may just be inhabiting that land, again, if that chief and his descendants decide to move, like we'll see once we get to the American Removal Act, and the other chiefs like, nah, we're gonna stay and fight, according to this clause, they're pretty much fighting for something that's not even theirs.
Right.
How this appears to be written here.
What do you mean by they're fighting for something that's not theirs?
Pretty much how Chief Alligator said here, aforesaid chiefs and their descendants. So if that chief who signed, so just I forget one of the chief. So let's say just say King Mulatto, he signed, of course, this treaty. So say King Mulatto and his immediate family, his descendants, say, you know what, we don't feel like fighting anymore. We're gonna move west of the Mississippi. So now the other chiefs who were pretty much in the area like, nah, damn that, we want to fight,
Right.
pretty much fighting for something that's not even theirs according to this treaty, because they're not one of the descendants or anybody within that immediate family of King Mulatto. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how it's pretty much reading here.
Which, if you fast forward it to today's time, it's the same thing. We think that, you know, we thought that we were a part of the Constitution and everything, and we're not. And so we defended like we were a part of it. It's kind of the same thing.
Right.
And it's like the same
Great.
thing when you fight for a president, but the president's not giving you nothing specific to you. It's just to color people.
Correct.
What I took from that piece was you can stay on the land as long as you still maintain all the crops grown on it. And then when you get tired of giving us your crops as you're gonna pay it back, because now they're paying them fiat, they want them to cultivate the land, and they're saying, hey, cultivate the land, stay all day. But as soon as you say, we're not cultivating no more, we're not gonna grow your crops, we're gonna, do whatever, you gotta report to the United States military at this point.
Right. I was going to build on that part too, if you could highlight it, Chief Biko, right after and their descendants only, that next part after the comma, so long as they shall continue to occupy, improve, and cultivate the same. Why do we keep, and this goes out to so-called quote unquote Black people, which we know are prisoners of war.
Right.
What we're doing. Why do we keep acting like we're not American when the supreme law of the land is clearly telling you who was cultivating the land? It was Americans.
Yeah.
And so they'll show us images of us sharecropping, But then in our minds, most of us will say, oh, we were just slaves. No, we were actually prisoners of war on our own land.
And
Perfect.
that piece,
Perfect example.
it's the perfect example. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
perfect example of that. Yeah. Improve, cultivate the same. That's what we was doing. That's the images that they're showing. But like you
You
said,
knew it.
we're so brainwashed to thinking, oh no, those were slaves. We're slaves.
Right.
We're
And
not these people that they're talking about as far as that was fighting and signed this treaty.
Right.
You're still in the confined area
And
under
that's why,
jurisdiction. Can't go outside of it. Can't go outside of your plantation. So
and
it's
that's
like,
where the slave mentality come from. Oh, you was confined to an area. I was already here. They
Right.
told me if I walked away, they was gonna, but right. So,
correct.
and then the confusion again, it comes from, I think in the beginning of our class when we did the American Inventor, you said white Americans own majority of that field, the occupation.
Mhm.
Again, white American. What is a white American? How do we get there? But
Great call out. Great call out right there. Where did we leave off? Anybody want to pick up here where it says it is further understood?
yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I see it. Yeah, I found it. It is further understood that the names of the individuals remaining on the reservations FRC shall be furnished by the chiefs in whose favor the reservations have been made to the superintendent or agent of Indian Affairs in the territory of Florida. So on that piece, it is further understood that the names of individuals remaining on that reservation. So they're pretty much accountability or accounting for everybody pretty much still in their their reservation or that land allotted to themselves. And that no other individual shall be received or permitted to remain within said reservations without the previous consent of the superintendent or agent aforesaid. So they can't, you can't go nowhere. You pretty much don't have the right to go outside your jurisdiction. So that could probably, so now it's making more sense. Okay, the whole slavery thing.
Right.
Correct.
Never prisoner of war.
Right.
We're seeing it
overseers.
now happening in Afghanistan. Just a little glimpse of what this kind of looks like. But
It's like they're slowly just confining them to one isolated place.
they have to, you got to go talk to the superintendent. The agent got to say, oh, is that what he got to go hire?
Right.
And we can just pretty much replace superintendent or agent for overseer. You replace that, and now you starts to paint that picture. Oh shit, this is us. They just changed the name like they changed the name for everybody else. How we've been reclassified from Afro-American, Negro, African-American. They're doing the same thing with their names. So if we could just paint that picture, superintendent, overseer, have to go to previous, got to ask the overseer, then they got to ask the master. Correct. Becoming minors, minority. All of these things are pretty much in unison.
You just put a little image in my head of sitting in classrooms asking the teacher to go to the bathroom. But
let me put a different spin on it. Let me put a different spin on that first sentence he read.
Okay.
Where he said, it is further understood that the names of the individuals remaining on the reservations aforesaid shall be furnished by the chiefs. So the chiefs are going to give the names, right? By the chiefs in whose favor the reservations have been made to the superintendent or agent of Indian Affairs. So it's up to that chief to say who he wants in that area. Let me put a spin. What if he wasn't a chief to begin with?
I think a lot of the people that they talked to wasn't real chiefs.
Right. Like, what if I'm selling out?
Self-appointed chiefs.
Right.
I think they talked to a lot of people that were because remember they took a lot of the chiefs away, the chiefs and the warriors away. So I think they were just talking to a lot of regular people, and a regular person, once you take everything from a regular person, they become desperate, and they was like, you know what, I think this would be good for the community.
Or
I agree with Chief Akubalon, because you're not making this, you're not even writing this up if the real chiefs are still outside.
Correct.
You don't have the time and patience to sit here and write all this up, and then a lot to have these new chiefs They say, hey, yeah, you because that chief, if the real chief, the head chief is still alive, this not happening. And then now you have a chief saying, okay, yeah, well, just for people who's gonna you definitely brought up a great point, Chief Alligator.
Yeah, great point. Great point
Then
there.
you see, we're going back to the Bureau of Indian Affairs again. You see, going back to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So we're not going to spoil it as we get into the American Removal Act, but everybody who's a part of this going west of the Mississippi, your ancestors are probably going to be in that bureau.
Right. Sure. Definitely. Most certainly. Even going back to what you brought up there, Chief Alligator, of how these probably weren't even the chiefs. We can kind of read that in that last article, I believe, Article 10, where they were saying we're gifting the agent this allotted land. We're gifting a real chief, knowing these conditions would probably like more than certainly be like, hell no, you guys aren't getting anything. We already been defined, but these imposters, we can say, are like, well, yeah, you're going to give me X amount of miles. Since I'm a principal chief, I'll give you whatever you need right here. That's fine. It doesn't matter to me. I didn't have this prior, so you're acknowledging me as something I wasn't prior, so I'll go ahead and gift you. So that can also be kind of how it takes. And yeah, that makes a good point. Even the Indian affairs today, that's probably a lot of their descendants.
A lot of the Indian affairs today.
Who are there today.
All right, pick back up. And as the FRC chiefs are authorized to select the individuals remaining with them, so they shall each be separately held responsible for the peaceable conduct of their towns or the individuals residing on the reservations allotted to them. It is further understood between the parties that this agreement is not intended to prohibit the voluntary removal at any point at any future period of all or either of the Afro-C chiefs and their connections to the district of the county south allotted to the Florida Indians by the second article of this treaty, whenever either or all may think proper to make such an election, the United States reserving the right of ordering for any outrage or misconduct the Afro-C chiefs or either of them with their connections within the district of the county south Afro-C. So that was a long start. The way they put these sentences together are very long. It's further understood between that. So what I initially took from it was you're not making no decisions without, going up their structure first, just going off the top. If anybody else want to add in.
Yeah, I'll add in that first sentence that you started on. Can you highlight that, Chief Biko, where it says "and" as the aforesaid chiefs?
Yep.
I like. Yeah,
I'll let you.
this, yeah.
No problem. All right. And as aforesaid chiefs are authorized to select the individuals, so the chiefs select the individuals remaining with them. So they shall each be separately held responsible. So everybody the chief selects to remain with him, each one of them are going to be held responsible. Here's the bomb for me: for the peaceable conduct of their towns. So when we look at history in the 1900s and the late 1800s, and they talk about this town or that town, you're clearly seeing right here, that's an American form of a city. We had towns.
Right.
You understand? Like, they try to make it seem like we were just riding around bareback.
Right.
No, we had towns.
Towns, for sure.
Again, which goes back to the structure that was already in place. Everything was already, the infrastructure was already in place.
Everything. And that peaceable conduct in their towns. You have dry counties or peace towns, what they would refer to it back then. So this is all coming full circle with the language.
Great point too there.
When we hear Rosewood or different, like when we hear different, like a Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, why do we disconnect ourselves from being American? Because we see treaties, that's what we had. We had towns.
And it's like they're taking, they basically took their stuff and then gave it back to them like they're doing something. Like, we're giving you permission to do these things of your own shit.
Which they are, yeah.
Like you said,
can
somebody
continue to
moved
grow
into
them
your house.
crops.
Right.
Don't want to push, but we're gonna come collect when it's time. Again, Fresno Wars.
Mob
Yeah.
mentality. Pretty
Right.
much.
Yeah, pretty
We're
much.
Gonna make sure we'll offer protection, but you gotta
Mhm.
give us tax. You don't pay up on your tax, we'll end up taking your stuff. Same thing, mob mentality. You've seen all the gangster movies you can. It's the same exact thing, same
Right.
principle.
And Chief Alligator pointed out something very important again. He said each individual is going to be held accountable. That means if anything went wrong, it didn't even matter. You were going to be held accountable for it regardless. So they all had to be in the code in a way to pretty much survive right at this point.
And here's where it gets gangster. What Chief Blackcoat just said, that next sentence, it is further understood between the parties that this agreement is not intended to prohibit the voluntary removal at any future period of all or either of the aforesaid chiefs and their connections to the District of Country South. So basically, we giving you a little land for your own, but any one of y'all violate, we gonna put you back on the reservation where you ain't get nothing.
All these
At
clauses.
all.
You did
Nothing.
All
let
these
you keep your
clauses.
town, but if one of y'all mess up,
It's over with. And like you said, when we was reading over, I believe it was probably Article 4, I want to say, the peaceable conduct of their towns, but they at any point can create roads through this area. And they
Right.
can't stop any
Nothing.
white persons, any Europeans to come through.
They basically couldn't fight back even if they wanted to.
Exactly. And you still, like you said there, Chief, I keep line, you have to report to even fight back. So how can you create a peaceful
Like,
conduct of
hey,
your
I'm
town
about
if you
to
can't
punch you in
defend
the face
yourself?
real quick.
They had them all the way fucked up, man. They had them all kind of in
Jam.
every which, all jammed. They was jammed. They was jammed up.
so I want to ask y'all a question. Why can't we see as Americans, why do we keep disconnecting ourselves and thinking that we were black and slaves when it's clearly showing you who had towns, who was running it? Like,
Because we haven't read these documents. Where
I don't
are
think
you
we're
going to find
disconnected.
this
I just don't think
information?
people know this.
Yeah, they just don't know.
Disconnected from something that you don't know, though.
Yeah, facts.
can you say that again, Chief Akibalon?
I said I don't think we're disconnected because you can't be disconnected from something. You can't be disconnected or connected to something that you don't know. And I don't think anybody really knows this because we don't read. Like, nobody reads a treaty. Nobody thinks to even read a treaty, let alone a book. So I think that people just don't read this stuff.
But if this was common education at a young age, kindergarten, pre-K, like they teach everything else, indoctrinate everything else. If this was known, then I mean, you can't take this information away once you receive it, basically.
We will understand our worth. We will understand
Exactly.
that you can't have slave patrol just hurting. None of this will happen.
Yeah, nobody's about to tell you in school, yeah, my ancestors, we really ain't have nothing, but we came and took all y'all stuff, so y'all really got the power, but now we gotta, we had to put y'all in slavery just so we can, calm y'all down. Nobody's gonna tell you that.
Like you said, like Chief Kulan said, y'all really got the power, but
Right.
it's really yours, but here's all we're gonna do is 360 deal.
Right.
Really? You want to keep pushing, Chief Blackcoat?
If somebody want to pick up,
I'll pick up.
okay.
It is further stipulated.
Yeah, I think it is further stipulated by the United States that,
Okay, hold
Scroll
on.
down a little bit so we can.
Okay.
I think he's a little earlier.
The earlier.
Yeah, it is further. No, you're right. It is further stipulated by the United States that of the $6,000 appropriated for implements of husbandry, stock, and in the third article of this treaty, $800 shall be distributed in the same manner among the aforesaid chiefs and their towns. And so, once again, they already want them to continue to work the land, as Americans are going to be able to do because they know the land. They're going to appropriate for them implements of husbandry. What's the definition of husbandry again, y'all?
That was pretty much cultivation of the land, pretty much maintaining the land.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So basically they're going to say, hey, we're going to give you $6,000 to continue doing what you're doing on the land. We're going to give you stock. Stock, I believe, would be livestock.
Yeah, crops and all that.
Mm-hmm. And in the third article of this treaty, $800 shall be distributed in the same manner among the aforesaid chiefs and their towns. So here we go. They're giving notes. The United States government is giving this nation, the Seminole Nation, they're giving them IOU notes.
Mm-hmm.
You continue to work the land and we'll promise to pay you. We'll give you IOU notes. So we can see how the wealth was being robbed because the wealth is everything that comes out of the land.
Right.
Right.
Anybody else want to build on that?
I just want to build off of that. We see it now today as far as like credit lines and different things of that nature. Like that they're not giving you anything, but they're taking everything from you in interest. You know what I'm saying? Credit is crazy. We'll give you $1,000. Here, you pay on it each month, but we're gonna tack
Not
on whatever
yours.
this
They're
interest
paying
is.
them
It ain't
more.
yours. You just paying us everything. You're paying us, so we can see how that was established here through these debt notes, these IOUs. They weren't getting anything back.
I think another thing that's a big factor that we got to take into account is the fact that they know how to speak, and they came with a different language and gave the original Americans their language, and they didn't understand the stuff. Just like in contracts now, it's words that people don't understand, and that's why you have to have a lawyer who knows these terms and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And dang, I just lost my point. But
You're right. Speaking
No, you was onto
legalese, they have
something.
their own language. They speak in legalese. So what you may think it's some common stuff as yeah, you'll give me this, but in legalese term, it's a whole nother thing.
Right.
So like you said, this is stuff that this whole contract we can see from the word, and is pretty much speaking in legalese. So even if they did understand the common language of the European, they probably wouldn't understand the legal side that they're really speaking with.
Yeah. We didn't have an interpreter for ourselves to understand what the European was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was an interpreter, right? But that interpreter probably wasn't, or wasn't that what the agent?
Correct.
The agent wasn't really working in the best interest of the American.
He was an agent. He was an agent. When we see him now, basically he was our he was a Black Caucus and these preachers and things of that nature. Really not in the best interest of the people, but more so in the individual.
I seen something floating around about how we no longer are going to accept athletes, singer, entertainers as our spokesman or our spokesperson. I seen that floating around in a whole article. I didn't read it, but I was like, okay, we're starting to see the game being ran.
Yeah.
We're starting to see who they put in front of us to represent us when times are needed, and it can't be, the athlete or the
preacher.
Anybody outside of the government.
Correct.
That's what you're noticing. That's been going on since like Sammy Davis Jr. days. Like they've always got that entertainer and put him in front of the TV. I think our biggest problem as a people is we watch too much.
Yeah.
That's what everybody does. That's what it's made for, is distraction.
Made for that, yeah.
It keeps you like the fact that other humans care about what celebrities do like they're not humans is just blows my mind, because it's like we treat these people like idols. And I get why people do, but that's just something to distract yourself with. Like what Cardi B did with Offset should have nothing to do with your life, and that shouldn't be your main news.
Exactly. Why do you care?
But it's all the same thing that like when they came to, this isn't in their contract, of course they wouldn't tell you this, but when the Europeans came to, they brought wine and breads, and those are two things that wasn't really like heavy I've read that it wasn't two things that were heavy in the native culture, and when they brought it, they would get them drunk and have them sign these treaties and stuff.
Not heavy, not at all.
Yeah. I just didn't want to say not at all, and I didn't know for a fact, so I just said.
I actually have a book on that shit. Excuse my language.
There's this I forgot what the name of the tribe is, but there's a tribe. It's one of the last like one of the few last untapped tribes in the world. I think it's called Jarawa, and they were talking to these people were recording their conversation with them, and they were saying this too, like these European people keep coming over here trying to give us weed. I mean not weed, but wine, liquor, and bread, and we're not trying to accept that, but they keep trying to us with it. That's like the same thing whenever they go into a new place, they come and get you intoxicated, so you don't really, so your defenses are low, basically.
Yeah.
It's a book
What's the
called
name of that?
A History of the World in Glasses. So it's pretty much a history of world in glasses. So it goes over all the beginning stages of whatever civilization drinks on today.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna pick back up at $800 shall be distributed. See where I'm at? Up and to the left.
Right here.
Right there.
Gotcha.
All right, $800 shall be distributed in the same manner among the aforesaid chiefs and their towns. And it is understood that of the annual sum of $5,000 to be distributed by the President of the United States, they will receive their portion. So based on what we just read at the end of that treaty before this article, the president doesn't even know this treaty happened. Because it's independent of the government.
Right.
So they're never going to get that. They're never going to get that $5,000. They're never going to get it. The president's never going to get it because the president doesn't know that they're signing this treaty. The military is doing this independent of the United States government. So they're lying.
Wait,
IOU notes.
white lies.
Let me see where we at. Okay. It is further stipulated that of the $4,500 and $2,000 provided by the fifth article of this treaty for the payment for improvements and transportation, $100 shall be awarded to Neo Mafla as a compensation for the improvements expended by him, as well as to meet the expenses he will unavoidably be exposed to by his own removal and that of his connections. So basically, they're gonna shoot him $500 because he wants to relocate, right? They're not gonna get the $5,000 coming from the president because the president doesn't even know that this treaty happened. So you can see how another war is gonna start because the money not right.
Right.
You promising stuff that people don't even know that you promising on their behalf. The president don't know nothing about giving them people $5,000 because Congress never declared war in the first Seminole War. Y'all with me?
With you.
Makes sense. Start to all make sense.
And then it says in the testimony whereof the commission, William P. Duval, James Gadsden, and Bernard Seagy, and the undersigned chiefs and warriors hereunto subscribe their names and affix their seals, done at camp on Moultrie Creek in the territory of Florida this 18th day of September, 1823, and of the independence of the United States, the 48th. Now, this makes me think about Malcolm X, okay?
Okay.
Everybody signed this document with what?
And X marks the spot.
So again, we have to stop putting ourselves in the Negro box and understand we're American. They were signing with the X back then. This is before the Civil War. This is before Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam and whatever religion. We have to understand we are the American. All of this goes back to these treaties. They were signing with an X. You see? The only person that signed with an X from the European side was Duval. All those chiefs and warriors, they put an X mark. So we can now, I'm finna say something. We can kind of see how a religion or an ideology was birthed in the 1960s, right? With the whole Malcolm X thing. Somebody could have read these documents back then and realized what their ancestors was doing.
Mhm.
And it just got made popular in the 1960s, but they were making X for their mark back in 1823.
Yeah.
Y'all with me? It's a dirty
Yeah.
game. It's almost like certain people amongst our group
Hmm.
have been hustling us, dancing around the supreme law of the land document.
Mhm. Like putting out a little bit of information here and
Correct.
there, but not in totality of the meaning of it, the history of it, or the significance as it relates to us, basically.
Like you
Right.
said, Chief Quiet Water, a bunch of half truths. It's
Mhm.
like people afraid to divulge the whole truth because they feel it might make them look bad. At this
Right.
point, what more or how worse can you look? We're in a
Right.
stage of, at this stage, it's like shit, every truth, that's what we just searching for, is the truth.
Right.
So if it
At this
doesn't
point.
fit your agenda, whatever that may be, then so be it. But you got to give the whole truth because it paints a bigger picture.
Right.
These half
Exactly.
truths leads people into
Confusion,
confusion,
All over the place.
ignorance.
and we get nowhere from it.
Right.
Get nowhere.
Now, can y'all challenge me on this last sentence? I just want to make sure I'm comprehending it right. Where it says, and of the independence of the United States. Does that sound to y'all like the military is saying, we're doing this outside of the United States government?
Independent of the
And
United
of the
States. Okay.
independence.
Y'all
And
I'm gonna
correct
look
me.
it up. Yeah.
and of the independence of the United States.
Because if I'm independent of you, that means that I'm doing my own thing.
And of the independence of the United States. Yeah.
And so I just want all of y'all to look at that and tell me, am I wrong for looking at that way? Like,
And
whoa.
of the independence of the United
Or
States.
would it say and of, well, yeah.
Because the United States government is already formed by this point. So, and of the independence of the United States. And of the
I think that's what it means.
Chief Akibalon, what you think?
Yeah, that makes sense for it to mean up.
That the military is saying we're independent of the United States.
Yeah.
and of the independence.
Yes, it's like they're being specific, Chief Black Coat, like they're saying, and of the independence. Like if I'm dependent, then that means I need you. If I'm independent, I don't need you.
Creating their own little entity kind of within the United States. Oh, the United States, but in the independence of right. Yep. That's what that means.
What about you, Chief Biko? I just want all
Yeah.
our minds to look at. I just want to make sure
Right.
I'm not seeing it wrong.
Was of expressing the relationship between a part and a whole. So it's saying and of the independence of the United States.
So the relationship is independent.
It's not saying and of the dependence of, what I'm saying? That would be
And of the dependence on the
yeah,
okay.
that would be with the United States and of
Right,
the
depending.
independence of the United States. Reads to me like, yeah, we're doing this independent of whatever the US government is trying to establish.
All right.
No, that's a great point. A great
Yeah.
something to really look into.
And that's that legalese thing again, like
The
the
word.
wording. Yeah, the wording, man.
Sounds like it don't make sense.
Exactly. Confusion. It's confusing. Keep them in a state of confusion. They'll never figure out what's actually going on. And they have done a successful job at it thus far, but we gonna unpack it and make sure everybody is on one code. Let me see here. So that was the end of the Moultrie Creek Treaty. We're gonna go ahead and jump into the Seminole War. But before that, I did want to share this picture because I wanted to give the viewers exactly what was being allotted to them. So this gray, this dark area within the state of Florida, this is what was pretty much allotted to those chiefs, our ancestors in that Moultrie Creek Treaty. So this area, and as we stated in previous videos, you see it was no connection to water. So it's not like any of this area was connected to any of the actual borders. They specifically made it not allotted to any of them. You see this little one area of this particular lake. And I'll let Chief Alligator speak on that. Would you say that this lake is more so like swamp area, or not any like not really a freshwater lake from just your experience?
Yeah, that lake is called Lake Okeechobee.
Mhm.
So the closer that you get toward Lake Okeechobee, you basically going into the Everglades or swampland.
Mhm.
So what they did was those chiefs wanted that land as far north, going back toward what we now know as Georgia.
Gotcha.
Right. But if they violated, if any one of them individually violated, then they were going to be pushed back down into that untillable land, which was now reservation area. They made it a concentration camp. When we're looking at this map, people have to understand Georgia was Florida.
Hmm.
I think that's the hardest thing for us to like. We're so used to the way they drew these boundaries, but we have to remember Georgia was Florida. It wasn't until Oglethorpe came in 1733 into Savannah, it took almost 100 years for them to push west, because that was a military buffer state. That whole Georgia was established to cut off people leaving the Carolinas running into Florida territory. Florida was Georgia. As they built out militarily through what we now know as Georgia, that's how they were able to cut the north off from Florida. Y'all with me?
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And they
Yeah.
could push everybody west of the Mississippi, which is what you see here on these. What we're looking at now is routes from the American or the Indian Removal Act, the American Removal Act.
Mhm.
We can see here. A lot of people always say slave ships were coming into New Orleans. Well, we're going to prove no. The human trafficking was going from Tampa, Florida to New Orleans.
Correct.
And if you don't believe me, ask anybody from New Orleans about the history of the second line. The history of the second line, they're representing all those nations of Americans, and in particular, Chief Osceola, which is that same American
Seminole.
before every Seminole college football game, when he puts that arrow in the ground before the football games, that's really one of our ancestors. But that's just a note for anybody who lives in Louisiana. There's a direct link from people in Louisiana to people in Florida, because that's how you were being shipped into Oklahoma. You were being shipped. That was the shipping route straight through the Gulf.
Wow.
And we're stepping on a lot of toes because there's a lot of doctors, that'll tell you read this book or read that book about the transatlantic slave trade. And what we're going to prove is the transatlantic slave trade was actually Europeans being shipped from Europe. It's amazing how we just omit it. It's like we know they didn't come from this land, but then we never ask, well, how do they outnumber us on this land? Because those were the millions of people sent on ships. We don't want to deal with that reality. They were on the ships. They were packed up like.
And before in this video, we'll make sure that we even show some images of that, because it's true.
And we can see our movement. We can see where all the people on the land was pretty much being pushed out. And it blew my mind when we actually came to this conclusion, because Georgia, Florida, and New Orleans, we all share that same type of vibe, energy, swag about ourselves. Nobody gonna really tell me what, like we all, that Southern ego, it's real. And New Orleans and Miami, you can't tell me they're not the same. I'm not saying they're the same, but they got the same type of verbiage, attitude, everything, lingo. So it's when we click this bait, yeah, I was like, wow.
And only thing I would say to people who are scholarly is just open your mind. It's okay to be wrong about something, but we're showing you what the human trafficking was. The human trafficking was on this land. They were sending Americans east of the Mississippi to the west and Indian Territory. If you put your cursor where Indian Territory is, Chief Biko, that's what we know now as Oklahoma.
All right.
So this is the 100th year of the Tulsa Massacre. I got to ask y'all a question. Why did nobody never say anything about American? Why did they always just say black? Those people weren't black. Let me say
Look
this.
how many Americans, how many in their turns, Native Americans are in this territory known as Oklahoma today. And you think
Mhm.
that they didn't build Tulsa, Oklahoma. They didn't build the whole state of Oklahoma.
Right. You
Where
look
did
at
they
all them
go?
nations. Look at them
Mhm.
nations. Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Seminole, Choctaw. You mean to tell me you put all them different nations, organized groups of
I'm
people?
black.
Mhm. Not a color,
Creek, Chickasaw.
nations, actual
Nation.
nationalities.
And you mean to tell me it surprises you that you get a Black Wall Street? Why you even call it Black Wall Street? It's really American Wall Street.
Mhm. Try to keep with the
Mhm.
narrative.
Come on.
Yeah.
Try to keep with the narrative. We got to get out of that mindset. Black is not a race or a nationality. Where do you see Indian on this? But they say Indian Removal Act. What state do you see as India? What nation? So
Technically, no Indians was
Americans,
ever removed from nowhere.
correct. Americans were removed and replaced with who? Europeans. That's
Europeans on
what
slave ships.
on slave ships.
Yeah, let's keep it real. Let's keep it a buck. As they were moving people west, they
They
were
were
bringing
moving in
in
something.
boatloads of them.
Exactly.
Oh, how they outnumber us today? Now that everybody's talking about the census.
Mm-hmm.
You ask yourself, people, how do they outnumber us on foreign land? How did they get here?
Right.
I'm just asking the question to all the scholars.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Blue.
We
But
see
again,
their
I like how you
pictures.
said the scholars got to open their minds because they will, push back. Years of studying and years of indoctrination. With me, having these conversations, sometimes it's like you don't, open the mind, man. Everything you read don't have to be absolutely the truth. Sometimes you
Right.
got to do deep dive, a little deep D, and so.
Yeah. We should know that off the rip. They've never given us the whole truth.
Right.
So that's like the whole point of like, why do we continue to fall for the same the same trickster, the same magician? We fall them for the same tricks. It's like, how can you, we should have learned from the assassination of Dr. King, but we still believing in the government. We should have learned from the assassination of Malcolm X, but we're still believing
Come
in the
on.
government. Tuskegee experiment, but we're still believing that the government has our best interests. We
And
see
it's
from this picture here, they want us out. Why do we continue to, no, we call on these same people who are here to kill us and replace us? They're a virus. They're a parasite. They've infected the host, being the Americans, and now they're taking all of the nutrients, taking all of the energy, and they're going to kill the host and move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So as we see, yeah, we get nothing in return for whoever we elect this, quote unquote, elect this president.
right.
We see that they're going to loosen up the restrictions on immigrants.
Mhm.
They need a new
Mhm.
host. They need a new host as a parasite. Like, this is all like, these things should be able to be connected for our people with
Facts.
ease at this point.
Facts.
And you're looking again. Oh, y'all want to go ahead and finish this up? You think we can finish the first Seminole War up so we can jump into the Removal Act next week? Because
Yeah.
on this image you're showing, I just want people to look real quick. They've already got the military fort set up to where they were shipping us. So this idea that we're coming from other lands, we're looking at.
And that ideal is insane.
Come on, we're looking at what happened. We're looking at it, and then we're going to read the American Removal Act, aka the Indian Removal Act. This was human trafficking in North America. This wasn't.
Why would the European have to create a treaty with people that came from Africa?
They can't.
Why would they even? You had to come up with a
Correct.
treaty because you wanted to make a deal with the natives.
Right.
You
Right.
didn't have to you didn't have to write all this up if you just brought some people from over the boat. You just tell them whatever to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Correct.
Right. Right.
Correct. You just brought
Yeah,
them
that
over
don't
here.
even
Why
make
you trying?
sense.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
They were automatic. If that was the case,
Why are
like
you
said,
fighting Seminole Wars? Why
right.
They ain't from here.
Like, y'all don't have no leverage on this land. Why do we have to? You're right. That's true.
So we got two separate operations going on.
Mhm.
This is the military operation. Okay. This is the military. This is the military creating treaties with the nations on this land: Cherokee, Creek, Chickasaw, Seminole, and Choctaw, moving them west of the Mississippi River. That's one operation. The other operation is the United States government with the United Kingdom and the nations in Europe bringing peasants over. So two separate operations are going on. You got the military sending Americans west of the Mississippi, and you got the United States government bringing in peasants through New York.
Correct. Emptying their lower class to fill what? The southeast region of the of America, not United States, of America. The southeast region, which we know as the what is it? The
Creek Confederacy.
The Creek Confederacy.
Right.
And then we see, okay, why are they so aggressive towards us? They was brought here to replace us.
Right.
That's what they call
Plain and
themselves. I heard a bozo today. I'm an American. I'm looking like, bro, what the fuck you got? But okay.
So when you watch those old movies like Little House on the Prairie and stuff like that, now it makes sense. Those towns, they made us go west of the Mississippi and then brought the peasants in and just gave them our town. Here.
House on the Prairie, yeah. The Pilgrims.
Exactly.
Wow. Little House on the, that's a good
Set up
depiction
shop.
of it for real. They started from
Crazy.
nothing.
Like
What is it?
It was already built. We already had
Squatters, a bunch of squatters already built, but I'm gonna just live here. Nobody else is here since they moved. I'm gonna just live here and claim whatever these pictures are. Yeah, that's my family. You look nothing like them. It's still my, like a bunch of squatters. Plain and simple.
So y'all want to push through that article so we can start on the Indian Removal Act next week? How much?
Yeah.
How much?
Just these like 4 paragraphs should be able to fly through.
Okay.
All right. I'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
For over 4 decades, the Seminole Americans battled the United States for the right to remain in their Florida homeland, but it would be a mistake to think the conflict was solely about land. It was a fight for freedom, identity, and dignity played out over a wild landscape that shaped the future for both sides. It was also part of a cultural clash that began when the first Europeans set foot on, on a Florida beach, was spread across the continent and continue to this day. Pretty much what we were just saying. It's about identity, dignity, and how they want to pretty much have it, as we saw in this first sentence. For 4 decades, the Seminole Indians battled the United States. Seminole who?
Right.
Seminole Americans battled the United States. So this, when we're reading these documents, we have to make sure that we're reading with the comprehension that the context that this should be American, not Indians.
Right.
There is no Seminole Indian, it's Seminole Americans.
They gave us coming over, an Indian, which probably to them means foreigner.
Right.
Correct.
The native on the land, the Indian.
Hell, they're closer to India than the Americans. They're European. They're closer to India than the Americans.
They're the real Indians. I mean,
they're the real
Indians. Correct.
First European to set foot. So when we're reading these things, you have to read through the code. First European. So how can the United States be a European?
Right.
How can that be one and the same? So these are things we have to look at. Anybody else, I guess, want to jump on?
I can start. Many factors led to tensions between white Americans and Seminole Americans.
See, they lying. No such thing as a white
exactly.
There it is again.
White Americans.
Citizen. You were
Right.
citizen. You ain't know how.
I've never seen that term. Well, probably seen it, but it just go over your head.
Right.
All our land today.
And like I just said earlier when speaking about the inventor, white Americans hold 69% of it. What is a white American?
Right.
It doesn't exist.
So they're Black Europeans. Yeah. If you want to play those games, why not?
Right.
Correct.
The trouble started with cattle and became embroiled with the issue of slavery, adding to the tension after 1814 was an influx of Creek Indians from Georgia and Alabama, who were either refugees from a civil war between rival Creek factions or people who were displaced by white encroachment. What are they saying here?
How much time is YouTube gonna let us have?
Yeah, we're just doing a summary right now. We're just
Okay.
reading over this, just doing the summary.
Okay. Yeah,
we-
this
So
is-
they're basically saying that the tension continued with the Creek Americans from Georgia and Alabama. So they're basically saying that once they came, they're making it seem like they were refugees from some kind of civil war or something, right?
All right.
Which
Well,
is not true.
Well, that's what Seminole is. You got remember, like where Chief Biko was from, those nations were collapsing during the
Got you.
Yankee Wars.
Mhm.
So you got different nations of people running
Okay.
south. And so
Okay.
we got different traditions, and so we're bumping heads.
Right. The natives are basically bumping heads at this point.
Because they're losing territory. Yeah. 'cause
Right.
they're pushing
Correct.
each other.
Look at us today, though.
From white
Right.
encroachment. Mhm.
Yeah. From the white, yeah.
Makes sense.
So these Indians held a deep-seated animosity towards white Americans that only added to the ill will that existed between the Seminoles and their northern neighbors. So like you said, it was kind of infighting that was going on. Because they all were coming from different places. So that makes sense.
Mhm.
I'll do this. Another factor was the strong desire by the United States to control the peninsula for economic and security reasons. Economic being the ports, because controlling Florida on the West Coast gives you access to the Gulf of Mexico, and you can do your trade with Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and Texas. On the South side, you got the Caribbean,
Mhm.
right? So they wanted it for economic reasons.
Trade.
Much of the commerce of Georgia and Alabama traveled to market via rivers that flowed through Florida. See? So you couldn't do business with Georgia and Alabama unless you captured Florida. The colony had also been used by the British during the War of 1812, and Americans felt the southern portions of the nation would always be vulnerable as long as Florida remained in foreign hands. You see how they did the wordplay?
Mhm.
And
Americans.
Americans, no, Europeans.
Europeans, U.S. citizens.
Right.
Belt.
They do that though. Like, what in your mind wants you to just
all-
continue to claim something that you're not? But again,
Tongue is slick. The serpent's tongue
already-
is slit.
It's nothing to be proud of. It's nothing to be proud of come from peasantry. But I'll be proud of all this American stuff they got.
Right.
Land of milk and honey. Facts.
Tensions only increased after the United States acquired Florida from Spain in 1821. Settlers began to enter the new territory of Florida to set up homesteads or build plantations, employing numerous slaves, which were really prisoners of war.
We're already there. So now it's just
And employing them.
So
See?
crop.
Yeah, see that
husbandry. Right.
That's another lie. Like when they make like they always paint this picture like they would just cut open a pig's guts and give it to us. No, it couldn't work like that. If that man had a skill of working the land, you had to treat that man a certain type of way. If you want that man to come on.
And employing is to hire. So is it a slave? If
Right.
you're employing somebody, or is it indentured
As long as you
servitude?
cultivate
What
that
is?
land.
How can you employ a slave?
They needed this again. The
They needed
Americans had the
efficient.
skill.
Mhm.
They didn't know how to work the land. And so, yeah, you got to think about this whole idea that they just, I mean, come on. If that's like somebody whooping me, telling me what I got to do. At some point, I just say, well, it's just going to stay broke then. It ain't going to get
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, kill us all
Good
off.
example, yeah.
Now die this way. Yeah.
You gonna starve to death? Bet.
Mhm.
You gonna starve to death?
Having hunted and lived in Florida for numerous generations, the Seminole occupied the best agriculture and grazing land. Settlers and speculators pressured government officials to remove the Americans, either to a reservation within the peninsula or to the land west of the Mississippi River. The Seminole are proud people who love their culture and their homeland, would not be forced from their homes without a fight. And so that sums up the first Seminole War, and that just backs up what we said last week. We now know the human trafficking on this land was what? Sending people west of the Mississippi River. This got nothing to do with Africa. Let's stop the lie. The human trafficking was sending people who lived in the Southeast west of the Mississippi, and then
Right.
sent people that were west of the Mississippi back over here. If you ship me right now to Oklahoma, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So
Mhm.
yeah, you can have me on your concentration camp working for you. Same thing if you took somebody from Oklahoma and sent them over here. So let's stop this, that we were part of, the only people that was a part of the transatlantic human trafficking. I'm not gonna say the only, the majority of the
Majority.
people,
Europeans.
Europeans, because you're not from America. You was on the
Right.
ship.
We see it in their talk. What is it? Coming to, what is the island? When they're passing the Statue of Liberty, all the
Ellis
Italians and stuff,
Island.
Ellis Island and shit. That's their heritage. So ain't no way in hell they can be American.
Right. And it says it
And
right
it
there.
and it's before that too, exactly. But you see, they'll try to, switch up the words, make them Americans, write them into it.
The brainwashing, not stopping your bill, Chief Biko, the brainwashing is what frustrates me, because once your third eye is open, it's like, why do we want to hold on to the word Black, Afro-American, minority? When you look at American history, it's clear we are the American. Look at all the inventions we've done back to the 1800s.
Mhm.
Why won't you honor your family? If you got great grandparents or great grandparents that's on this land, why are you claiming anything?
Don't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a rare group of Europeans that can go back 4 generations of grandparents on this land.
Hmm.
Think about that. Most of these people just came over here last century.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Facts. Facts.
Like you can ask them, okay, at what grandparent came on a boat? And if they
Mhm.
honest with you, they got to tell you, my granddad came from Sicily, or my grandma came from, yeah, you came from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I go ask my grandma, and she just say, "Well, baby, your grandma was here too down here in Savannah.
Bet,
Her mother was, so yeah." I can't find nobody in Africa yet.
I got great aunts and uncles still living. When I go back to the country, when I ask them what you know about Africa, baby, we don't know nothing about no Africa now.
They'll tell you just like that.
Baby, we don't know nothing about no Africa.
Like, that's
no,
what I understand.
It's just like that. Like Africa, baby, who's here? I don't know. We won't speak that language.
Great bill. I'll
Shout out to the brothers in Africa though, and the sisters.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
But if you ask them what stories did they hear, well, here's what we know. If it was really human trafficking on that level, there's got to be a treaty with one of them nations from West Africa. Come on, y'all.
There has to
And if
be.
you ask someone, because I do have friends that are native to African countries, and they're not taught about this huge transatlantic slave transport at all. They have no clue. And they learn it when they get here, but that's not their history. But you would think if it really happened,
Exactly.
it would be part of their history,
Correct. That's an excellent
Just
point, Chief Quiet Water.
ours, right?
Because they like, what are they talking about? This
Right.
shit ain't never happened.
You
Like,
don't have.
what? Y'all believe this?
I still haven't seen any nation or country or however they go about it in Africa advocating for the us, the Americans, to come back to where we were originally from.
Right.
No one's out there like, hey.
Right.
And that's
not real. It never happened.
Hold on, that's Chief Biko just putting the cherry on top as we close this one out.
You see it?
You should let it out every day with that one.
You gotta bring it back up.
I think I moved it. Put it back. See it now?
Boom. If you click on
the Atlantic liner.
Can you click on that image?
Yeah, it's giving me like a small little thing though. Hold on, let me see if I can.
Try to click on the image itself.
Okay, here
it is.
There you go. Okay.
Look at them faces.
Look at that, man. Look how many it is.
Mm-hmm. Stuff like, what is it? Like slaves. They just not laying flat.
We easily looking at more than 500 people with just what we can see.
For sure.
Now,
and let's think about it, people. Oh, go ahead, Chief Alligator.
No, I don't want to stop your bill. I was just going to say, understand they were looking forward
Mhm.
to leaving Europe because the way their social structure was set up, if you're born in the peasantry, you don't get a chance to move out of that class.
That's the American dream. American dream right there.
That's the American dream. You can come over here
And be what you want.
your military has already cleared out a lot of the land and already got the natives building and cultivating for you.
Mhm.
So it's almost like, what's that cartoon when we were young, Chief Quietwater?
Hey.
Where they had to click their heels. If you click your heels, no, at 12 o'clock, the pumpkin, the carriage
Cinderella.
Cinderella.
Oh.
Okay.
That's what they're doing. They're living their best life. That pumpkin turned into a carriage. They went from
Ooh.
peasantry. Yes.
Good example.
They went from
Yes.
peasantry to acres of land. And
That's the American
come
dream.
on, man.
Cinderella.
I was gonna say I would love to be a fly on the wall when they're telling this group of people, hey, or when they're advertising for them to come to the Americas, hey, get on this boat. I want to know what were they telling them?
You
Because
could
look
be
how
anybody
many
you want to
on
be.
this boat.
You're an engineer. They need engineers over here. Start your own engineering business. We have land that we done cleared out from the Americans.
All of that. Yeah.
There's some documents. I don't want to drift because we're going to stick strictly with the timeline and the lawful documents. But in the Library of Congress, when you pull up those immigrant photos, there's some literature that you'll see next to those photos and their writings of that time. To answer your question, what they say is in the Americas, there's so many inventions and so many new opportunities. So yeah, bro, they were living their best life. They were willing to take that transatlantic trip to come here and live their best life.
Yeah.
At our expense.
It's a monarchy over there, so
At our expense.
And see, you're not going to find a live picture like Chief Biko just showed. You're not going to see a picture like that of us.
Hell no. You'll see sketches, not drawn the scale of
movies.
It gotta be 5-foot people on these damn sketches, all lined up like planking.
Yeah,
unquote.
where are the real
Where are those? Where are the real?
images of humans?
Where the slave
shackled?
ships?
Yeah,
At least give us that. If you can't provide the people, the bodies, where the ships at? Because ain't no way in hell you gonna rowboat your way up over here. You see that picture we just saw had steam engines.
Ship. Right.
And if you're bringing over 500, as Chief Blackcoat said, at least you might be able to get to your 12 million, but nah. Not on no damn rowboats. And we know if they're supposed to be sending over Africans from the 1600s to 1800s.
Yeah. And
yeah, come on.
To me, you just said something, Chief Biko, that made me think about the boats. If we really did, or if they did have a real transatlantic slave and it was Africans coming from Africa, they would have let them ships stay up and put them in museums to show us what they did. Look how we had you guys. Where the ships at? Why you don't want to show them?
Great
example. You would advertise that all through. You would have ran with that one.
They advertised the Santa Maria. They remade that shit.
You feel me?
A replica.
Well, the ship.
They burnt them ships down because it was all bullshit.
Biko just showed that's one of the ships, and then the ships that they were using in the American Removal Act. We're going to read one of the chronicles where it clearly they were on steamboats taking people up the Mississippi River to Oklahoma. So
they could barely do that.
The human trafficking happened right here on this land.
Yeah,
right.
And it's so crazy because I'm old enough to remember we read a little bit about the Oregon Trail and a little bit about the Indian Removal Act, but
not a lot.
Not a lot, and it was always just one picture with an image of a long-haired, quote unquote, Native American with tears, but never reading the documents. Because if I would have read these documents, I would have been like, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that people got shipped from Florida to Louisiana? From Georgia, had to walk on Tom and Jerry from Georgia to Oklahoma?
Who are these people? and not even only that, like you said, we're going to get to that part, but these steamboats was having trouble going up the Mississippi. So if they're having trouble going up a river, by God, they must have trouble coming across the ocean. You know what I'm saying? And you can't refuel your coal if it's this body, you know what I'm saying? What the fuck is going on? It's the type, like common sense stuff that we have to get
Right.
to at this
It's
point. Like,
becoming more and more
yeah,
common sense.
yeah,
Like
it's
you don't
comical to
have to
say
do
that we're
too
from.
much digging.
Yeah,
I'll do
silliness.
the let me see. I'll do the inventor next week.
Okay.
Is the recording still going?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
okay, cool.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and
Keep it professional right now.
another good meeting. Anything, Chief Biko, you gonna close us out?
That was it for week 7. Next week, week 8, we'll continue with the American, First Seminole War, and then we'll move on from there. Great meeting though.